Hello and welcome to Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelly Kino, and Hashtag No Limits is about people whose society has placed limits upon but who are busting through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet, "We know who we are, but not who we will be." And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is not a better or a more beautiful example than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For those who don't know, I'm just going to give a super simplified science lesson here. The caterpillar literally dissolves into its cells, and it must think its life is over at that point. But then it reforms into the butterfly. But it isn't finished struggling. In order for its wings to be strong enough to take it everywhere that it is going to soar to, it has to struggle to get out of the cocoon. None of that can be easy. At least I don't think it can be. But neither is busting through limits that society places upon people. And as usual, I am excited to bring my guest to you today. I'm going to say her first name, but I'm not even going to try to say her last name. I will let Elizabeth tell you her last name when she joins us. But prior to bringing her on, I just want to remind you to please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you do not miss a single episode of Hashtag No Limits or any of the IEP tips, tricks, and ideas that I bring to you for behaviors, for collaboration, and all the things that I present to you as a special education consult, oh my goodness, as a special education consultant, goodness, and as a special education coach, advocate. And so make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Give us a hashtag live or replay and where you're watching from. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Elizabeth on. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you so
Hi,
much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's Mikotowicz, by the way.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, I totally would have botched that, so I am glad I didn't even try. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Elizabeth.
Well, I'm an artist and a new author. My true crime memoir, No Justice, Just Us, is now out. Um, I'm an activist and I'm a mom. I'm an American. Yeah, so I was adopted at birth. I grew up with a pretty normal family. I was neurodivergent and I got misdiagnosed with ADHD, bipolar, and turns out I'm just high functioning autistic and I don't do well on medication at all. I reverse on them. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of doctors try to like force medications on me and they put in my chart, I'm difficult, I'm defiant, I'm not serious about my recovery. And, that's just not true. I just don't want to play Russian roulette with their medications anymore. The last episode I had was on lithium, and it resulted in me going to the emergency room, needing 7 stitches. I also had, my first bully in life, messing with me at the time, and I wasn't, in a good place to take it, and that definitely contributed to it. But yeah, I think certain people are wired a certain way, and that's okay that they're wired differently. And medication is not for everybody, and if someone's scared to take it because they've had bad experiences, I don't think it's helpful to just force more medication on them. My book is about how domestic violence led me to going to prison, or escaping domestic violence led me to going to prison. I was assaulted pregnant, to the point my skull was showing, and that injury altered my life overnight. I could no longer drive. I was getting seizures. I was going deaf and blind for moments at a time. I was now in the pain clinic. Um, they and when I tried to refuse because I was scared of getting addicted, because I'd watched so many people in my community go down that road, they threatened me with child protective services, saying that I was endangering my baby, by not listening to the doctors. And I believe they were one of those like big pharma whale doctors where they were getting a payout. And when I tried to go get my records, when I got out of prison, conveniently, they only had records 7 years back. So I think there was, a lot of corruption and, profiting off of people suffering, which is still going on in America. And, my book breaks that down. It also breaks down my federal case, and my trauma and, my neurodivergence and, figuring out who I was, um, you know, and how to deal with those things. So yeah, it gets pretty raw, it gets pretty heavy. And I saw a lot of horrific things in there. Some of involving children. They would house juveniles with us when they got to be too much of a problem, for the police or the correction officers at the juvenile detention centers. And 9 times out of 10, these kids had been sexually assaulted, and they got tired of taking it. So they finally fought back. And instead of the jail doing something about it, they just got rid of the inmate. Kind of like what they're doing at the ICE detention centers, where they just move the people and say, oh, they're not here. We don't know where they are. So you can't check on them. It's kind of the same thing. They've been doing that to Americans, for decades, and just sweeping the problem under the rug. No person, no problem. If you can't talk to the person and hear what we did to them, then there's no problem. Nothing happened. And, we have a lot of corrupt institutions that are allowed to investigate their own crimes. And I think that adds to it. Um, yeah. What else would you like to know?
Well, that was a good introduction. So there are several things that you mentioned that I would kind of like to extrapolate and talk about a little bit more. So you said you were adopted, and
Yes.
I saw on your website that you were born in Illinois, but you were adopted by a family in Maine, and so you said you had basically a normal life growing up. Um, so what was it? Was it the well, let me just say put it that way. What was it that caused you to be misdiagnosed so often, or what kinds of characteristics were you exhibiting that was causing the misdiagnosis?
Well, I would get manic and not be able to sleep for usually like 72 hours at a time. And it turns out I'm intolerant to food dyes that will make it so I don't sleep at all. And so I think that's where like the bipolar diagnosis came from. But, if you read my bipolar diagnosis, it's riddled with misogyny. I mean, the guy literally said, I get bored in my relationships like after 2 years. The only relationships I'd had at the time, one, I was 15 years old and the guy was 24. He strangled me pregnant while he was on meth. And then when I finally stood up for myself and broke up with him, it like escalated to like a much more violent man who gave me that head injury. So the two relationships he was talking about, like I was being very badly abused. Like I was being raped. I was put in the hospital with bones showing, and this guy like basically put it in the report that, oh, I just get bored with my relationships. That's not it. I was being harmed like extensively. And I think women and minorities, they love to throw out schizophrenic diagnosis on Black people because it's easier. It makes it that much easier to institutionalize them. And women have, been dragged through the mental health diagnosis, horrors for, the last 100 years. I mean, what did they used to call it? Dys
Dysphoria?
Dysphoria. I can't remember the
Yeah.
term they used to use for women. When they weren't happy and they didn't smile enough, they'd get put in institutions by the men in their family. And I can't remember the term, but I think mental health has been very much weaponized against people, if they're different or if they don't, cater to society norms. Oh, there must be something wrong with them. Is there something really wrong with them, or are they having like a reasonable reaction to the traumatic stuff they're going through? And once I started looking into autism, my brain doesn't work like other people's. And I've known that for a long time. Like, I have sensory issues that I don't watch neurotypical people have. Like, I can feel lightning before it strikes if it's close enough. And
Mhm.
like my hands, like certain vibrations, like I had a phone, and every time it would vibrate, like I could feel it up my arm. And I would have this moment where I'd be stuck between wanting to break everything and wanting to cry. Now I wouldn't, because I've known how to mask things, but I'm sensitive to certain sounds and certain lighting, and it will elicit an emotional response. And neurotypical people don't understand that, like how uncomfortable it can, like it makes us. And so, the high functioning autism, that made sense. And there's a whole term of misdiagnosed women called the lost girls. We were diagnosed with all these other things, and it turns out we're just high functioning autistic. We don't need medication. We just need, a different structure. We learn differently. We operate differently. And that's okay. That doesn't mean we're defective or broken. That just means we need to do things differently. And that should be okay in the land of the free, but it's not. It's stigmatized and it's weaponized against people. And I have a very big problem with that.
Yeah. And I find that it's not just in our country, it is happening
Right.
all across the world that people don't take the time. And I don't know if that where that is driven from, but they just don't take the time to truly investigate individual situations. I mean, I know, here in the United States, a lot of that is driven by insurance. Medical professionals they get paid through insurance most of the time. And the
Yeah.
insurance agencies are the ones saying, well, you should only spend 8 minutes on average with each patient. And you can't investigate and truly get to the bottom of what's causing the symptoms, the
Right.
characteristics, and in 8 minutes.
And
And
that's
so,
dangerous. They're prescribing these medications where if they go horribly wrong, it can put the person in psychosis. Like, that's what happened to
right,
me. Like, I went in psychosis every single time I had a bad reaction to these medications. And it was literally like somebody pushed me outside of my body, and I was watching myself do it. And I had no control over what was happening. Like, I needed 7 stitches. I literally almost killed myself because of the wrong medications, and because a covert narcissist in my family decided to play mean girl with me when I was in this vulnerable state. And it's we have a problem in this country where the second someone is labeled as having a mental health issue or having addiction or felony or inmate, as soon as these stigmatized, dehumanizing terms are used, it doesn't matter what happens to them. It doesn't matter how their human rights have been violated. It doesn't matter that they're telling you what happened to them. It's, oh, well, you have a mental health issue, so we can't take you seriously. Like, come on. Like, get over yourself. Like, there is this, like, people think they're so much better than somebody because they haven't been through the same hell that person was forced to go through. And my family included, I had this step sibling that was the mean girl in high school, and she was awful to me growing up. And it was so pathetic because I used to want to be like uh you know um accepted by her so badly. And then I finally grew up and realized, like, I don't like her. She's so mean for no reason. Like, you, like, just to be cruel to somebody who hasn't done anything to you so you yourself can feel superior. And then, as an adult, she sits there and talks about how she had to go off Facebook because she was sitting there playing the comparing game too much. Like, that's weird. That's what every diagnosed narcissist does, is they compare themselves and how they're better, than somebody else. Like, that's so weird to me. And then she was that same person who bullied me into a literal suicide attempt when I couldn't take it. And then I find out she's driving drunk with my kids. She got a DUI, and because she owns a business and could pay her way out of it, I don't even think she went to jail. But you want to drag me for my addiction, which was literally forced on me. Nobody put a gun to your head and made you drink and turn into, a complete alcoholic. But you want to drag me for, getting threatened by doctors and almost getting murdered. And I'm not using that and you don't need like some sad story to get empathy as an addict, but you should have empathy for everybody, regardless. And this person doesn't. And it's just, the hypocrisy is so wild to me, because it could be anybody. Any of us could end up, on the other side of that wall. And then you're going to be the one dehumanized. You're going to be the one labeled. And, it's just this, we have a problem in America with establishing who's better than who. And, we're all people. We all deserve empathy and safety and basic human rights. It's amazing how crime goes down when basic human rights our needs are met. When people have healthcare, when people have affordable housing and food, crime goes down, addiction goes down. But we have a system that profits off of the suffering of Americans, and it only survives because people like that, who like to think they're better than others, profit off of it.
And I've heard this saying, and I've found this saying to be true over and over again, is that hurting people hurt people. And so oftentimes, we don't know what's going on behind the facade that we see. And I think, again, our society in general, now my husband and I have traveled the world, and unfortunately we've seen way worse conditions in other parts of the world. As rough as it is here in the United States, we still, as women, have it so much better than women in most other countries around the world. As far as, we can speak our minds, we can get whatever kind of job we want, we can be a part of whatever religion we want, we can stay home or we can go to the workforce, we can be educated, we can, walk freely out in public, we don't have to cover ourselves, we don't have, and so there's a lot of things that are definitely better here in the United States.
At the same time, they're sterilizing women in prison, and they're not white. So, that's true. But when you have human rights atrocities to that level happening, and you're claiming to be the greatest country on earth, and, taking this moral pillar, claiming you're this pillar of, morality, and you profit off of never-ending wars and sending your people to go die so a couple billionaires can make some money, I don't know. Yeah, we have the illusion of freedom, and yes, we can speak our mind, but yeah, we work to death. We don't have health care. Our food is literally killing us. I have friends that are gluten-free here, but when they go to Europe, they don't have to eat that way because the food is so bad here. It makes us sick. And I just think, I think we have the illusion of, greatness, and it's kind of coming crashing down right now. And people are kind of seeing it for what it is.
No system is perfect. No country is perfect. Every country's leadership has good men and women in it and bad men and women in it. And that's not, though, why I brought, why I wanted to have you as my guest today. We could discuss all of that stuff for hours and never solve all the world's problems, of course. But so you had said that you had been misdiagnosed as schizophrenic and bipolar and
No, not schizophrenic. It was
schizophrenic.
ADHD, and bipolar 2.
Okay. And so the statistics are that people with neurodivergence are seven, if they're boys, 7 times more likely, and if they're females, 12 times more likely to be incarcerated, be abused, be molested, be trafficked, be
Absolutely.
neglected, all of that sort of thing. And so I want to talk a little bit about those statistics and your experiences, because I
Mhm.
think you said you were 15 when you were pregnant.
No, I was 18.
You were 18. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but that was in a bad relationship, correct?
Yep, and I got pregnant on birth control, so it was like totally not expected, and I was not trying for that at all, and it really kind of ripped the rug out from under me, and yeah.
Right. And so just I'm trying to just kind of, focus in more on the neurodivergence, and then talking and bringing that into the your book, The No Justice, Just Us, because I do think that many times that people who have some sort of unique learning ability are categorized without all the facts. And I
Right.
do feel like, they get sort of, I hate to use this word, but my brain isn't coming up with anything else than like railroaded into,
Yes.
oh, you said this, you did this. And so every single thing now, that's definitely leading you down a path to prison.
Right.
Um, so if you don't mind sharing a little bit about, I mean, you did say that you ended up in prison because of escaping from a domestic violence situation. So
Yep.
do you feel that your autism played into your reactions, how you were treated, both
Yes.
before and
Yes.
while in prison?
So I went to a battered women's shelter, called Spruce Run up in Maine, and I was in shell shock. And he had pushed me around 7 months pregnant, held a knife to my face, and goes, "One more tear rolls down your cheek, and I'm going to cut your face off." So I didn't cry after that. And, my
Right.
neurodivergence, like, I usually don't cry, period. Like, I usually have delayed reactions. And so that was a problem for this battered women's shelter. They said they didn't believe me because I wasn't crying like all the other women. And, you know, I was floored. So I brought the hospital records and I brought the police report, and then they did a 180 and said, "Well, your injuries are too extensive and it puts the other women in the shelter in danger. So we're not going to help you." And so it was drug dealers who had helped me, and I lost my apartment and was now homeless, and I couldn't care for my children anymore anyway because I was going into seizures, and like they weren't safe with me. Like they were toddlers, and I was waking up on the ground not knowing how long I was out for. And I'm going to wake up to a tragedy, and like I won't be conscious for it. And so that was definitely like rock bottom for me. Like I kind of spiraled once they turned me away, and I was like, all right, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to help myself, and I'm going to take these drug dealers up on their offer, and I'm going to sell drugs, and that's how I'm going to survive. I couldn't hold a job because I'd always get fired for either missing too many days or being a liability because I was having seizures. And so that basically, and then I eventually caught drug charges for selling. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, how I ended up going to prison.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear all of that. It definitely does not sound that, your life has been easy. However, it does sound like you have busted through a lot of limits in your lifetime. And so I would like
Yeah,
to talk about those now, before we
definitely.
wrap up. So, I mean, obviously, you're out of prison, you're not using drugs anymore, or not
Nope.
illegal drugs, maybe no drugs whatsoever. You seem like you're living a successful life. You've got a book out.
Yes.
So, what has been the greatest limit you feel that you have busted through?
You know, I had a federal prosecutor stand up in open court and say that I was so traumatized that I would never get clean, that I would overdose and die before like I ever got clean. So, I'm going to be 40 in September, and like I know they want women to like feel ashamed about getting older, but every year I just kind of like it just kind of feels like another victory to me. And what happened to me kind of just enraged me and, gave me the drive to do something about it. Like now I work with state reps and I write legislative bills and I bring them to state reps, and some of them have gone on the table and been passed. Like we got a bill passed in Maine to mandate all the jail facilities provide tampons and pads free of charge for women. And there's a bunch of other bills that I've been working on to try and get and put on the table and just expose the horrible things that are going on. Like we should not be claiming land of the free and make up 25% of the global incarceration rate. We have more prisons than we do colleges. And, I was grateful I got to paint murals in prison. And I've had art shows now that I've been out. I've taught art classes for, mental health issues and, PTSD. And I have an environmentally friendly clothing brand that's based on my paintings and that I've sold in stores. So, I've, done things. And I also got some poetry published. I submitted a couple entries into some writing contest, and I won 2 years in a row and got my poetry published. And now my book is out, and it's a true crime memoir. It breaks down my case, the trauma. By the way, I met worse sociopaths on the street than my ex. Like there are literal pictures of medieval suffrage devices in my discovery that an escalating predator used on women. Like it got very messy. There were levels of criminal sophistication that I ended up, getting in over my head with that I didn't think was possible in a rural state like Maine. But it is, organized crime is everywhere. And, I tell the stories of the women that I was in there with. Like 70% of incarcerated women had some sort of domestic violence or sexual assault before we ever even got arrested. And those are like the majority of your criminals, abuse victims. And it's also a call to action. What are we really allowing to go on in this country? You know I don't think people's suffering should be exploited and profited off of, and that seems to be like the biggest thing people are capitalizing off of. So I try to bring awareness to that and, sell my art and, just work and have a good life now.
Well, I'm glad you brought up your clothing line because I did want to talk about that. So, how do people access it? I'm going to put your website up, which I did once, but I'm going to throw it up
Yes.
bigger.
So you can access it through my website. There's also like a separate website. I'm not very technologically savvy, so like I have the link on, yeah, my website right there, but I think there's a way to like merge the two. I just don't know how to do it because Legalaris is it's a company in Canada that they take artists and you can make your own brand. with your art. So like I paint something and then I upload it onto, you know, their portal site, and I pick out what clothing I want it on, and then, you know, they make this really good quality, environmentally friendly like clothing brand for women. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun to sell. It's, you know, I've gotten it in stores. Like that felt like a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. And I'm gonna spell out your website. So it's ELIZABETHMIKOTOWICZ.com. And
Yes.
then if people want to get a hold of you through Gmail, it's no justice, just us, EPM at gmail.com. So that's
Yes.
no justice, NOJUSTICE, just us, JUSTUS, and then EPM. It's all
Also, I haven't gotten the funds yet to make the book purchasable on the website. It's like another $1,500, but I'm almost there. So you can purchase my book on Amazon, or the ebook is on all of the platforms. I don't know what I'm doing. I have literally been like flying by the seat of my pants writing this book and just getting it out there. So I am gonna, full transparency, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I've formatted it myself, and I use Kindle, so it uploaded it on to Amazon fine. But all of the other platforms, the paperback, it like turned into symbols and stuff. So I'm still having formatting issues. So if you want the paperback, you have to go to Amazon right now. But I'm working on it. I will eventually figure it out. I just haven't figured it out yet. So
okay. Awesome. So I just want to give you last opportunity. If there's anything, any words of encouragement, sage advice, or anything that we didn't cover that you want to speak out about for the next couple of minutes, now is that opportunity to do that.
sure. If you are a young woman, don't get pregnant young. Get your own money before you get into a relationship. Do not rely on a man for anything, because that will trap you financially, physically. It's amazing, you know, the power we give away as women. And we're taught that it's normal, and it's literally endangering ourselves. And I had to learn the hard way. If you are struggling, I am always available. I will help you if I can. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. My handles are EPM underscore art underscore 1111. And it's the same on YouTube as well. I'm available for speaking engagements. If you have, you know, legislation you want help with, if you have movements, you know, you want some advice on how to get it going, like I am absolutely available to help you. Um, I want to make the world a better place. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being my guest today. And I like that we have the same mission of wanting to make the world better. We're doing it in different routes, but that is perfectly okay because each of us can continue to make the world better one person at a time in whichever capacity we are working on. And thank you to everyone who is listening, and make sure that you just always remember we know who we are, but not who we will be. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.